Today we're headed out of Seoul to Gyodong-do, an island only a stone's throw from North Korea, yet completely cut off. Our aim? To talk about unification. Hey buddy, how's it feel driving into the island that's basically 3 kilometers away from North Korea?
Yeah, it's kind of got this quiet epicness to it. It's different to anywhere else in Seoul, anywhere else in Korea.
We were able to meet up with some locals who remember a unified Korea. North Korea can be seen clearly from Gyodong-do and is a stark reminder of the reality of the situation, that Korea is divided. During our filming, this sobering moment happened.
In the same way we might be, and
We didn't just hear an explosion, did we?
그래서 오늘 에피소드는 동일 이야기입니다.
right, so at the Gyodong-do Mangyangdae, what does it feel like being here?
Honestly, it's kind of surreal. Seoul in of itself is its own world. So even getting out of Seoul sometimes feels like you're going into like a completely different side of Korea. Which is it's so interesting because I live a life in Seoul where it's almost like you get trapped in this bubble to some extent. Like my day-to-day isn't affected by the fact that technically Korea is still at war. So as we were driving out, see things like army trucks, and it starts to become, barbed wire, things that show that actually that we're getting close to a place where we can't go past. We went to the Xijang earlier, started talking to some of the people. And we found one guy specifically. This isn't his hometown. He was born just over there. And his family have lived and died there. I can't imagine you living in this space where you're only, I think, about 7 kilometers away. And yet somebody's decided that this is the point of division.
연세가 어떻게 되세요?
94세.
그러면 몇 살 때 오셨는지 말씀 주실 수 있으세요?
그러니까 저 연북서 2살 먹어서 왔어요. 연안읍에서.
지금 그 고향이 여기하고 이 땅하고 거리가 어느 정도 되는지 얘기해 주실 수 있으세요?
여기 바닷가에까지만 가면 뭐 거리가 얼마 안 돼요.
그래요? 통일에 대해서 어떻게 생각하시는지 말씀 주실 수 있으세요?
통일되면 좋죠.
고향 생각나시면 딱 좀 그리워하시는 거 있어요?
생각나는 거래야 뭐 이 가족들하고 헤어진 거 그거지 뭐 다른 거야 생각이 못 나요. 우리 가족이 다 지금 연안 백사포인데 거기 있어요. 그 기억이 나요.
안녕하세요.
미국 아저씨들이네.
미국은 아닙니다.
Who aren't originally that interested in North Korea.
영국에서 왔어요. 예.
저희가 오늘 영상에서 통일이라는 주제에 대해서 얘기 좀 나눠보려고 하는데 혹시 개인적으로 통일이라는 거에 대해서 혹시 어떻게 생각하시는지 좀...
통일이 되면야 좋지요. 뭐. 통일이 돼야 좋지요. 뭐.
연세가 어떻게 되시는지
80 넘어서요.
그러시.
90 가까이.
그러면 어리셨을 때 지금 북한 땅이 그냥 조선이었겠네요, 그죠?
그러면.
그죠. 그럼 그때 왔다 갔다 하셨어요? 여기 가보셨었나요?
그전에 이렇게 되지 않아서 그럼 막내하고 댕겼죠. 연대고고. 근데 인전 내켜서 못 댕기지. 그전에 댕겨서요. 거기 창도 몰아댕기고 그래서.
그럼 지금 막혀 있다는 거에 대해서 조금 아무래도 안타까운 마음이 있으세요?
그렇죠. 안 맥혀 있는 게 뭐 좋아요. 나 통일이 돼서 같이 댕기에 좋지. 근데 그런 날이 언제 오고 왔는지 그건 모르지. 우리도 살아서 올려나.
말씀 나눠주셔서 정말 감사합니다.
Really made me think, you know, obviously we met that guy, but the ladies we met as well, they weren't Shiryangmin, like they weren't originally from North Korea.
Right.
But I don't know why I was surprised, but I was slightly surprised that they were just so like, yeah, of course it'd be good. Of course we want unification. Because they actually haven't seen it, like we've lived, most young Koreans have just always seen it as two countries, right? But like they have experienced unification. The original thing was a unified country.
Sure.
So even the people who weren't from North Korea, the lady was like, yeah, I used to like visit. I used to do my shopping, like us going to the other side of Seoul, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's like, it really makes you think, like they've seen a Korea that was one country,
Sure.
and then now they don't see that anymore.
Yeah.
Of course they would want to see that again, right?
I think if we look at the example of East and West Germany, I think seeing a unification of North and South Korea like that may be something we may never see in our lifetime. I think there's so many factors that make it difficult in terms of, especially in terms of the economy. You have to look at the differences between the two countries. Even culturally, it's not as easy as people will expect it to be. Personally, I'd love to see unification to some extent, whether it's free travel between the two countries. But for an open unification, I don't think it's something we'll see anytime soon. It'd be amazing to see it happen. Will it happen? To be honest, I don't see it happening in my lifetime.
From a foreign perspective, I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to have an opinion. I'm not Korean, right?
Right.
I mean, obviously I have an opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what that opinion is. My heart has always been for reunification, and I've realised since living here, it's a lot more complex than just the idea of it. It's very, very complex socially, very, very complex politically. And so my one hope would be that in my lifetime we'll see South Korea, North Korea come back together. That is something that I would love to see that. And yet I think we've got to guard what that looks like.
Right.
I think we've got to protect people, because even economically it's going to be a confusing thing. Like, how do you join two different, communist, capitalist, coming together, and what that would look like? And I think there'd have to be a lot of protection. So I think a lot of people we'd have a lot of vulnerable people, and because there is no perfect system.
Right. Right.
Like if there was freedom for people to come in and out of the country, for South Koreans to come in and out, I think that's got to be the first step.
Right.
Is this kind of acceptance to, okay, we remain as two countries first, and let's get to know each other. I think it's not just a political thing.
Yeah.
We've got to cross the border. We've got to see their life. They've got to see our life. And I'm not even a big fan of the word compromise, but I think what's important is just to understand each other and have a relationship first and foremost.
Well, when I think of unification, I think of the country being divided for 77 years now. And when I first came to Korea, there was a lot more enthusiasm for unification, I think, than now. But and maybe the reason why the interest in unification has waned is maybe, I think for a variety of reasons, including North Korean bellicosity, but also more of a focus on just developing prosperity for the citizens of this country. But I hope that unification does occur, needless to say, because I think the soul, rather, or the spirit of the Korean people can only truly be whole when the Korean Peninsula, the Korean nation is reunified, and I think ultimately that needs to happen.
I think, like, to be honest, with any subject that you're interested in, or even a little bit about more than the average, you start to see particularly in Western media or British media, sometimes they can just be so lazy in the representation, and that really feeds into the way people perceive that issue.
Yeah.
Something I've noticed with that is North and South Korea, the issue of unification, the issue of like conflict and all these things. Like just the perception of it is so black and white
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
basic and so like generalized, but sometimes generalized where the foundation isn't even necessarily like true. And I just had this view that was kind of based on that stuff, which was just like, North Korea's bad, the system's terrible, everyone is in some kind of camp, no one's happy.
Yeah.
And then kind of judging the people based off that as well, almost kind of looking down on them in some ways.
Almost a pity, but a judgmental pity.
Yeah, not in like a helpful, like,
Yeah,
can we,
yeah.
you know.
Like, thank goodness I'm not you.
Yeah,
It's
right.
like, but I'm not you.
Right,
You know, and I will never, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the two things that really, or the three things really that really helped me to just like process it a little bit. One of them was, there was a professor in a Korean university, and I read one of his books about North Korea, and he was like, kind of said something that really similar to what you said actually, which was like,
Really?
unification could happen or it could not happen. But if we can just have a better relationship, if we can actually have some kind of dialogue, that could actually be more important than whether or not we unify. Ultimately, if you don't have dialogue and if you don't have this kind of kyoje, like fellowship and this kind of going back and forth, we're not going to get anywhere anyway. And the second thing was, when I was studying at SOAS, there was a course called The Other Korea. And it was taught by the guy that set up the British embassy in Pyongyang in, I think, the early 2000s. Wow. So he lived there for like a couple of years. And he would just like open up his computer, put it up on like the screen, and he'd be just like, this is the North Korean so-and-so minister's secretary who had a dinner out there, a dinner party. And it was just all these photos. And then it would be like, this is an anecdotal situation. And then let me explain like how that links to the Korean lifestyle, North Korean lifestyle, or how that reflects like the North Korean system. Sure. And it like humanized something that had been so dehumanized for me. Yeah. He'd actually lived there. They were like real people in the photos. It wasn't like fake. It wasn't like some tour that he was on. And then the third thing is, I can't remember exactly what year it was, but I was asked to basically have weekly like hangouts, essentially, just having coffee and stuff with 3 North Korean students in London. And the first time I met it was nuts because we went to Starbucks, it was near where their halls were. And the next table, there were 3 South Korean like students or, you know, young people. And I remember just thinking like, this could be the only place in the world now where you can be in a Starbucks and there's 3 North Koreans having coffee, British guys as well, and 3 South Korean people having coffee, tables next to each other. And these guys knew so much about football. They knew so much about subjects that I thought were like banned in North Korea. Yeah. And they were just really nice people. Yeah. They were really warm people. And the way they would speak to each other in Korean was exactly like the way young South Koreans speak to each other. 25-year-old guy, he was the hyung. Yeah, the other one would say something that way, he'd be like, 그러지 마. And they'd be like, 네, 형. And it kind of made me think, wow, there is a Korean culture that is both North Korean and South Korean. I could see it. Yeah. I thought, wow, that's Korean. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be one or the other, that's Korean.
And Korea, being in South Korea, I realized, in some ways, if you want to get to understand North Korea, come to South Korea. Not saying South Korea is anything like North Korea, I have no idea, but there must be similarities. Hierarchical structure, you talk about. These things that are so alien to me.
Respect for like elders and honor, 높임말.
It seems like a very difficult mission, very challenging. Ideally, I hope one day it will be possible for the Koreans. Because imagine this, like as a South Korean, you can suddenly go to the other part of Korea and explore the food, the cultural sides, the history on that side. You know, it's as much Korea as this side of Korea, I think. But ideologically, they are now so far away from what we are. And the generations that have experienced also the southern part of Korea, they hardly exist anymore. So I wonder how much North Korea has to give up to be part of South Korea and how realistic that is. Like, would the Kim family give up their power to unify? I wish it is possible, but I think it's very difficult.
I think to, in any objective way, say unification is good, you'd have to actually unify first and see what it looks like. If there was unity after unification on all levels, socially, economically, culturally, then you could say it was a good thing. And if not, and that was the reason for it, then you could maybe say that wasn't a good idea. So I think unity as a goal, whether there is unification or not, could actually be more important. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the big one. That's got to be the big one.
진짜 좀 평소에 많이 생각해보지 못한 부분이라 탁 떠오르는 말은 없는 것 같아요.
단어 자체는 익숙한데 토픽에 대해서 평소에 생각할 만한 이슈가 없었던 것 같아서 이게 익숙한 단어 대비 그렇게 깊게 생각은 안 했던 것 같아요.
저 같은 경우에는 뭔가 좀 어렸을 때는 뭔가 막연하게 통일이 되면 좋겠다 이런 생각을 많이 했었는데 주변에서는 또 의외로 통일에 대해 안 좋게 보는 사람들도 많기도 하고 그런 시선들이 있더라고요. 그러니까 언젠가부터는 좀 이 이슈에 대해서 꺼내기도 조금 조심스러워지고 그래서 생각도 많이 안 하게 된 것 같아요. 뭔가 커가면서 점점.
People ask me this a lot. I still don't know the answer. So we have the privilege of living in South Korea, but we also have the privilege of visiting North Korea if we wanted to. Would you? You haven't, right?
No, I haven't. I used to really want to though. Sorry, it sounds like a bit of a cop-out, but yeah, if the right opportunity came up. Yeah, if it was in the right context. Yes. And some of them have. Did you hear that?
That was like, I could feel like the table shake.
Yeah.
I don't know if the mics will pick that up, but that was.
Did you hear that?
We didn't just hear an explosion, did we?
I think those people down there said,
Can we
sounds
see?
like they're firing guns.
Did you hear that, Ducky?
Yeah, the big boom.
What?
I think it's okay. There's no sirens. I guess maybe it's just a drill or something. I don't know. Gosh, that really threw me. It's funny though. Like, you go back to Seoul and I'll just never feel scared. I'll never feel
Right.
on edge.
Yeah.
Because we suddenly realise how close we are now.
Yeah.
Yeah.